Thank you, Robert. You are a delight. Well, it's time for me to introduce once again Reverend Julie Lobato. She is presently the Associate Minister at the New Center for Spiritual Living in Boulder. She has also for many years been an adult advisor at regional and national camps for youth run by the Centers for Spiritual Living. She is also active in her local community, which is currently Brighton, Colorado. She manages finances for multiple businesses. I think she told me there were 4 of them, and is also the business development manager of Worth Financial Partners, Inc. And she is a founding board member of Body, Mind, Solutions. She's also been a staff minister at the Greater Philadelphia Center for Spiritual Living and is a member of Kiwanis International. As you might guess, she is a master collaborator and a busy lady. You can find additional information and commentary about Reverend Julie on our website. And so without further tooting her horn on her behalf, I will just let her speak for herself.
Thank you, Foster.
You're welcome, dear.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Barb. That was beautiful music. Do you mind if I put this on your stand? Thank you. I'm going to keep myself going here. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. What a beautiful day. What a beautiful day to come and be here and be a part of this incredibly loving, wonderful community that you have here. I know already that I've been changed for good in my life. I know that I have experienced circumstances, events, and have met people that have truly changed me for the better and changed me for good. And so I'm going to invite you to go with me this morning on a journey where we are going to explore some areas in our lives where we may discover that we've also been changed for the better and changed for good. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, says the greatest good that can come to anyone is the forming within you of an absolute certainty of yourself and of the relationship of yourself to the universe, forever removing the sense of heaven being outside of yourself. I am convinced, absolutely convinced, that we attract into our lives the people and the experiences and the events on purpose that help us go deeper within, that help us to experience the divine and become even more consciously aware. It's really all about, to me, it's about waking up, and then we kind of close our eyes, and then it's about waking up, and then we close our eyes, and then it's about waking up, and all of these events and people and circumstances like a tapestry come into our lives, allowing us to further deepen our knowledge and our knowing that the divine truly resides right here within each one of us. All of the great mystics' teachings are all the same. They all agree that the soul is on the pathway of experiencing self-discovery. So there is a natural life energy, I believe, that exists in each one of us that's urging growth, that's urging aliveness, that's urging being constantly awakened. And it's a deep natural pulse that tells us to live from the inside out. And so these experiences and these people encourage us to live from the inside out instead of that external viewpoint that we so often are taught to go and look at, that external validation, that external, yes, you're okay, or no, you're not okay. There's this divine urge that is constantly keeping us to remember to live from the inside out, to reach in and to reach out for all that is possible to know, to contribute, and to receive. And sometimes, a lot of times, This can show up in our lives as disturbances or inconveniences. What a perfect way to grab our attention and invite us to come alive, wake up, and go inside, is when sometimes an inconvenience or a disturbance comes up. I'm going to tell you a quick story about a time when I went on a sabbatical to Alaska. I lived in Florida at the time, and I decided to take a summer off, a 4-month trip, and traded my Nissan Pathfinder in on a Coachman Catalina Sport RV that was 22 feet long, and I drove to Alaska. And I have many stories from that time, that adventure. There's one that in particular that I'm going to share with you this morning that is an opportunity where an inconvenience allowed me to go within. And so I am in northern Canada, not too far from crossing the river to go into Alaska. And I don't know if any of you have been in that area or not, but there is nothing there. Literally, you will go 100 miles without any sign of civilization whatsoever. I'm having a great time chugging along, and I noticed this is in the part of the terrain where you're kind of going up a long hill and then down a long hill, and then up a long hill and then down a long hill. And I started smelling this really strong smell. It was a combination of the smell of oil and rubber. It wasn't a pleasing smell, and I knew, oh, that's probably not right. So I pulled over, and I got out, and I had popped the hood, and I looked under there, and I didn't see anything, and I didn't smell anything weird. And I walked all the way around the RV, didn't see anything or smell anything weird. So I thought, okay. So I got back in and kept trudging, went up a hill and went down a hill. And then it just got really strong again. And I thought, well, maybe I need to leave the RV running. Because, sometimes when they're turned off, they do different, it's going to show me something different if it's running. So I got out, popped the hood, and left it running, and was looking underneath there, couldn't see a thing amiss, didn't smell a thing amiss, walked all the way around it, and went to get back in, and the door was locked. Yeah. And I'm familiar with what happened, because in this particular model, the lock and unlock button were little round buttons right on the handle, and a lot of times when I was driving, my elbow would hit it, and it would lock it, and I thought, that's what happened. I probably hit it when I got out. So I stood there, taking in the situation, and it was a surreal moment for me, because I took a really small walk 3 times around the RV, just looking at the windows, seeing if there was a chance that I had left one open, which there was not a chance. And after I walked around 3 times, because it took me 3 times to convince myself that the external was not going to show me a solution at that time, I sat down in the grass next to the running RV, and I went into treatment. I just started treating. I just started meditating. And do you know what happened? It started to rain. It did. It started to rain. Now, normally, I would have been probably not that pleased to be sitting in the grass and getting wet with my running RV locked and trying to figure out how I was going to get in there. But I knew instantly why it had started raining. Because the second it started pouring down on my head, I thought of my tarps. And guess where my tarps were? They were in my outside storage compartment. Now, it's important for me to let you know that I was really conscious every time I got in and out of my outside storage compartment. It was a compartment about the size of this piece of paper, maybe just a little bigger, and it had the little door that went up. And I was conscious about always keeping it locked, so much so that I would keep my keys in it so I would know, gotta lock it before you leave. And I thought to myself, there's no way it could be unlocked. I would not leave it unlocked. But it's raining, and Spirit told me to check it. So I got up and I checked it, and it was unlocked. Unbelievably unlocked. I'm like, so surprised. So I took everything out, the tarps, spread everything out on the tarps, covered it. And that particular outside storage compartment, if you're familiar with RVs, the bench seat was accessible to it. And there was just a piece of plywood on top of the bench seat. And there were 2 boards holding the plywood. So I assessed the situation, got some tools, out of my toolbox, which was also in the outside storage compartment, and I did my best to break out those 2 wooden pieces, which I did eventually. And so then came the fact of, okay, how am I going to get through here? Now, granted, I was smaller then than I am now, so just imagine that, because I know you're going to be like, yeah, right. No, I'm telling you, I swear. So I tried to go in head first and that down like this, and that wasn't working. And so I discovered that if I went like this, and went in that way and kind of inched up that way, I was able to do it. I was able to inch by inch. Now I tore some skin off of the little hips here, but other than that, little skin tear, little bruising, I got in, and I was so grateful. And I know for a fact that when I sat there and went into treatment, it started raining. I know that was Spirit saying, check the external compartment. So that was an inconvenience, that was a disturbance, but it did cause me to go within. It did cause me to get really, really clear about the situation I was in, the situation I wanted to be in, and I was able to move through that. So that's just an example, one example of many, and I'd love to hear all of yours because I know you would have several as well. So the gift of most disturbances and inconveniences is that they pull us deeper into the experience of our being, which is really what it's all about now, isn't it? I heard once, if you aren't living in constant awe and amazement of life, then you aren't paying attention. And I want to pay attention. I want to pay attention. Ernest says that life waits upon your discovery of natural laws, your discovery of yourself, and the discovery of your relationship to the great whole. Life waits upon your discovery. So I take that to mean not necessarily that life is over here stamping moving their foot and saying, okay, when are you going to get around to it? I see it as waiting, like a server waits on you. Life waits on you every single moment of every single day and every experience for your natural discovery of yourself. A constant, sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle invitation to go within. I think to myself now, because I love those experiences now, I welcome them. That's why I love to travel, because we can be so in the moment. I wait to see how I'm going to show up in my world after a particular experience happens. I want to see, how has that changed me? Who am I now? Of course, there's a lot of times great resistance to change. I think a lot of times we don't allow ourselves to evolve. We don't allow ourselves to fully surrender to a particular change because we fear we're not going to feel comfortable in it. And who wants to feel uncomfortable? I don't think anybody wants to feel uncomfortable. Or I think a lot of times we don't because we fear we won't recognize ourselves. We fear that we won't be able to identify with the old image that we usually held in mind and usually is defined by society. So I'm going to tell us a quick story about a girdle. Maybe I should have had that girdle on when I was in Alaska, come to think of it. That would have been great. Donna Markova, an international speaker and author, she was spending time with her mother in her elder age, and her mother she was kind of helping her out, and so she was spending a lot of time with her, even in the evening. And she noticed that her mom still wore this really tight, all-body girdle that apparently was really in fashion and style back in the day when society didn't think that women needed to have anything jiggle. So she asked her mom, because she noticed she even wore it under her nightgown. She said, "Mom, why do you still wear this girdle? Don't you want to be free and see what it feels like to be free of this constricting thing that you've got in your body all the time?" And her mom shook her head and said, "But Donna, I wouldn't feel like me if I were to take it off." But how would she know? I mean, what experiences have we gone through that has allowed us to get to know an expanded me, an expanded you because of it? What if we were always so afraid of not feeling like ourselves that we never take the girdle off? I am not going to sign up for that one. I'm taking the girdle off every opportunity I can. every opportunity. So I believe we all have stories that are exactly like the mother and the girdle. We can cheat ourselves by identifying with a limited notion of who we think we are just so we can fit in, or just so we can fit into that old definition that sometimes literally we can fit in and belong to lives so much smaller than our souls long for us to be. Parker Palmer wrote, "No punishment anyone might inflict on us could possibly be worse than the punishment we inflict on ourselves by conspiring in our own diminishment." Yet that's what we do, isn't it? When we're being called to grow and expand in consciousness and we resist. So I'm going to ask you, are you conspiring? Are you conspiring in your own diminishment in any area of your life right now? Are you resisting your soul's urgings in some manner, fearing maybe what you don't know, and wanting to hang out in the comfort of what you do know? If anything came up for you when I asked the question, I invite you to be really gentle with yourself. Be very loving with yourself. I invite you to hold some sacred space for the expanded you to show up, for the expanded you to reach out its hand and say, "It's time. Come on this journey with me. Let's experience more of the divine that we know lives and thrives within us. Come." Walt Whitman says, "Re-examine all that you have been told and dismiss that which insults your soul." Even what you tell yourself. Let it go. So we can have events that cause us inconveniences and disturbances that allow us to go within. We also have people that come into our lives, just like the beautiful song that Robert sang. That sometimes we can think, well, I really don't know. I'm pretty sure that I was changed for the better, but I know I've been changed for good. I can tell you about one particular one. I love this statement in Forrest Gump in the movie. Remember when has everybody seen Forrest Gump? Anybody? When he's getting on the bus and he says, I can't tell you when I was born, and I don't remember my first picnic, but I remember the day that I heard the sweetest voice. And it was when Jenny said, "You can sit here if you'd like." Well, I remember the day I met Alan Davis. When I came back from Alaska, a friend, a colleague of mine who is an independent Science of Mind minister called me up. He was the director of the Salvation Army Social Services in Florida. And he said, "We just entered into this new contract, and we have a brand new program, and I want you to run it. Would you come run it?" It was a wonderful experience, a wonderful part of my life. It was a contract that the Salvation Army entered into with the Florida Department of Corrections, and it was a faith-based transitional housing program for ex-felons, women and men. And it was a phenomenal opportunity. Don, my boss and the director, gave me perfect leeway to do whatever I wanted, which was really awesome. And so I wrote a presentation, had to go to all of the prisons in the state and present it, and then they get to pick whether they want to come into your program or not. So my job was to fill it and then run it as their case manager. Alan Davis showed up in my office one day. He was an elderly, tall, thin, very well-groomed African-American man. And he came into my office, and he was very distraught. He seemed very down and very depressed. And he said, "I've been released to you. They cut my sentence short. I'm not supposed to be out yet. But I'm dying. And I guess they didn't want me dying on their watch. So now you've got me." So he said, "I'm just going to wait here." So I asked him, what if? What do you desire to experience with the time that you have left? Because we really don't know, do we? I asked Alan and I ask you, What do you want to experience with the time that you have left? What an amazing gift, I told him, to be out in the world and not in prison, to experience this time that you have left. What a gift. What do you want to do with that? And I could almost hear his thoughts. I know he was saying, yeah, right, lady. But he hadn't met us yet. He hadn't met us at the shelter yet. But that is how changed for good, how life can give us an ultimatum to change. Sometimes we are given subtle nudges to go within and experience the divine livingness within ourselves, and sometimes we're literally bowled over. Etika Luckett, who is an international musician and singer and songwriter and an incredible speaker, was the final speaker at the Asilomar conference this year. And she shared in her talk about her experience and when she was bowled over and given the opportunity to go within. And she said, illness is not a game or a battle to be won or lost. For all of us, each of us are going to pass away. How fully do we live? There is more for me to experience. How do we bring the fullness of our being to every single moment? It's not about errors, but about opportunities to grow and evolve, to deepen in our awareness and expand our humanity. I could not have said it more beautiful than Etika did. And so when Alan was embraced into the program and embraced into the shelter, I taught science of mind classes there. It was really awesome. I mean, I would love to tell you more about it one day. But he got fully embraced. And it wasn't before too long that the twinkle was back in his eye. He had a huge smile on his face. And the children loved him. We had family shelters as well, and he helped out so much. He was a personal, dear friend of mine the whole time he was there, because he came with a higher consciousness. Every day he would go to the library and read, and he would come back and he would tell me about, how to improve my program from the observation of someone who is going through it. He became a collaborator with me and with the shelter, and everyone fell in love with him, and he had this huge family. And as his health declined, I got him into hospice, and he got everything that he needed. He went from a cane to a walker to an electronic scooter, and then eventually moved into a hospice nursing home where they were able to take care of him every day, and I was with him when he passed away. And he was just one of the most wonderful, wisdom-keeping, loving man that I'd ever had the privilege of spending time with. Who have you experienced in your life that has come in that you would have never guessed? You would have never guessed, and maybe never even invited to come into your life, that has allowed you to be changed for the better and changed for good. Hafiz says, something has happened to my understanding of existence that now makes my heart full of wonder. There's something else that takes place that needs to happen, though, when we're going within. We have these experiences. We get close to the divine within ourselves. We also need trust. We also need faith. Last month, in August, I did a leadership workshop with the Youth Commission, and we did a high ropes course. Has anybody in here ever done a high ropes course? Okay, a few of you. I had never done one before. You step into this harness thing and you put it on and you latch yourself up, and then you have a team. I had a team of 3 teenagers and myself. And when you get way up there, because high ropes courses are way up there, was higher than the ceiling. And when you're done climbing or you're done doing the really difficult thing that you're doing, the way to get down is your team gently lets you down. You have to lay back, completely let go of everything, and just sit in your harness. I don't know. I highly recommend the experience to everybody, because there is just nothing like trusting the folks down on the ground when you decide to let go and lay back and be gently brought down to the ground. So I asked them, because on my team there were two young teenage girls and 1 teenage guy. I wasn't even sure if they could hold me. So that was a big one. But I'm up there, and I asked them, I said, you got me? And they said, yeah, we got you. I said, you got me? Yeah, we got you. You got me? And after the third, yeah, we got you, I did it. And a lot of times that happens with me and the divine. You got me? Do you got me? And the divine always says, yeah, I got you. Because the universe always conspires on our behalf, all the time. Albert Einstein says we are part of the whole, which we call the universe. Yet it is an optical delusion of our minds that we think we are separate. This separateness is like a prison for us. Our job is to widen the circle of our compassion so that we feel connected with all people in all situations. And a lot of times we don't always see those self-revelations coming, those great self-revelations. One of the youth commissioners that I work with, his name is Austin. And this past spring, he was diagnosed with a really rare condition that only 100 people in the world have ever been diagnosed with. And his treatment and prognosis was good. He just had to undergo some heavy-duty steroidal treatments and had to be hospitalized to go through those. So he was in the children's hospital on the children's ward. Now, I know this story because Austin was running for president of the Youth Commission for this year. And it was a part of his presidential speech that he gave. And as a part of that speech, he said, the reason why I am inviting you to look at me as being the president of the Brighton Youth Commission is because when I was in the hospital, you know, I know service, and Austin did know service. He was incredible. He served the community in so many different ways with an open heart. And so he told us all, he said, I know what being of service is about. I knew it. He said, when I was in that hospital bed, and I could hear the screams and the cries and the loneliness of the kids that were in the rooms all around me, all I wanted to do was go and hold them and hug them and love them and be with them. I found out in my heart what service was. And so he made that transition from head to heart. He got in touch with the divine within him that allowed him to enter into a servitude that was far greater than any his mind could ever conceive of. So take these opportunities to grow our hearts and become clear vessels of love that is seeking to express through us. We don't always know when they're going to show up. But I invite you, and I invite me, I invite all of us to be aware and awake to them. Donna Markova, the one with the mom and the girdle, says we have to learn to reconnect with ourselves so that we can stand for something that is greater than ourselves. Austin did that. He was given the opportunity to reconnect with himself so that he could then be of service to all those other children that were on the floor with him. So in what ways are you learning to reconnect with yourself right now in your life? What ways are showing up? Because the universe always conspires on our behalf. So I know that there are ways that are showing up in your life right here and right now for you to reconnect with yourself. For you to be led to an even greater understanding and connection of others. And I'm not saying that you're not there. I believe that you are. I can feel it. I know that I am, but I know that there is always something more that I can feel about the divine within me. There is always something more there. And life keeps embracing that and welcoming me and inviting me. Donna Markova, the one that I keep bringing up, she tells a very profound story of a way that it came up for her, where she got to understand more about herself that allowed her to love others. She got invited, her and her husband got invited to go visit the Dalai Lama, and she was ecstatic, over the moon about it. She said for 6 months, she prepared for that trip. She sat in meditation in front of the news, and she blessed everything that possibly showed up in her life that didn't look like a blessing, and she wanted to be just completely spiritually prepared for meeting the Dalai Lama. So she thought about it, and she put herself into practice about it. And finally, the day arrived when they landed. They landed in the airport, and right before they got into the car that was going to drive them for 2 days to take them to the area where the Dalai Lama was residing, one of her guides told them both, now let me tell you something. She said, you're going to be approached by a lot of people asking you for money and a lot of children. And we just invite you, if you want to give, please do. But there are some reputable organizations that truly take the money and help children in the city. But please don't give it to the kids, even though you're going to want to, because there's this thing that's going on. And people that are a part of this network are harming the children. They're cutting off their fingers and doing things to them to make them get more money from people. And we really don't want to put any power or energy into that. Donna was like, holy Moses, of course not. Holy cow, I'm not going to do that at all. She immediately and instantly went into herself. And she said for the next 2 days, there were nearly thousands of opportunities to draw back into herself when the beggars would come, mostly children, and ask for money. So she pulled in and she pulled in and she pulled in and she pulled in. And on the second day when they got to where they were staying, she could barely walk up the steps. She noticed how her muscles were tight and her ligaments weren't moving. And when she got to the top and went inside, she thought, oh my goodness, I've come halfway around the world to experience a community that I have just spent all my energy withdrawing from. This is not going to do. This is not going to work. It's not working for me. So she thought, I know what I can do though. I'm not going to give them money, but I can give them my love. So the next morning, she awoke, refreshed, ready to meet the Dalai Lama, and she opened the door. She was going to walk outside and greet the day, and there was this beautiful envelope on the floor. She picked it up and read it, and it said, we are so sorry, but due to the Dalai Lama having an illness today, he's not going to be able to meet with you. And she was crushed. She was crushed. She felt the sun that was out had gone down. Her day was darkened. She walked outside just completely wilted and in complete despair. Everything that she had hoped for and worked for 6 months wasn't going to happen. And she was so caught up into her own self-misery that she almost didn't notice this little girl coming up to her and tugging her shirt. And she looked down at this little girl about 6, 7 years old. She had big brown eyes. She had her hands opened up like this, begging for money, and she noticed that she only had 2 fingers on the right hand and 1 finger on the left hand. And the little girl was looking at her as if to say, won't you love me? And she immediately remembered her promise to herself the night before. And in one swell swoop, she picked up the little girl and brought her up into her arms. And the little girl leaned her head back and she started laughing, and she was so full of love for this little girl. She hugged her tight that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she started singing to her. How could anyone ever tell you you are anything less than beautiful? How can anyone ever tell you you are less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. Donna started crying, and the little girl took her 2 fingers on her right hand and plucked a tear off and brought it to her lips and kissed her tear. And Donna said in that instant, her heart grew a new chamber, a brand new chamber with this little girl's name right on it. And she recognized and realized that she was forever changed for good because of that experience. The little girl wiggled out of her hands and ran off, didn't even look back. But Donna said that I have held the memory and the thought and the essence and the presence of that little girl in my heart ever since. Buddha says when you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky. I'm convinced that the little girl knew how perfect life was in that moment because she was receiving pure love and was being acknowledged for the beauty and the marvelous divine spirit that she was. So may we all become ambassadors for what we love in the human community. So I'm going to share with you in closing, I'm going to share with you a poem that Donna wrote. She wrote it the night that her father made his transition. He came to her in kind of a vision. And she said she immediately went to her desk and just started writing this poem down. She didn't think about it, she just did it. The name of the poem, the title is, I Will Not Die an Unlived Life. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance to live so that that which came to me as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on as fruit. What have you been given with which to give right now in your life? Where do your talents and the needs of the world intersect? So I am dedicating this poem to you this morning, this beloved community. For here is where my talents and the world intersect. This incredible, loving community is in the blossom stage, I believe. And I know that I am being called to move here, apply my skills, apply my talents, apply my heart, and commit to growing with you to nourish the greater community with its fruit. You are very, very important to me. And you have my complete long-term commitment and dedication, for there isn't anywhere else that I would rather be co-creating. And I'm going to do a quick shout out to my incredibly loving, wonderful, compassionate, and very giving husband, Tony, for today is his birthday. He's right there. And my beautiful, wonderful, loving husband, we haven't been married a year yet. That's in September. It's this month, but it's ended this month. So it'll be our first year anniversary. And I just want to acknowledge how committed he is, he is to what is so important to me and what is the passion in my life. And I just want to honor and say thank you and I love you. So I'm going to ask, do you realize, this is one of those notes from the universe, it's my favorite. Do you realize that there is yet one more step on the ladder that is even better than having a loving universe conspire on your behalf? Right. It's being that universe, and we are. So join with me in knowing that there is a powerful presence and a divine love taking place right here and right now, and that we are all open and receptive to it. I know that there is perfect right action of love, and I know that we are one with it and that we embrace it. That we allow the circumstances and the events and the people that come into our lives, we allow our hearts to open and our minds to be receptive to truly be changed for good. We allow ourselves to dissolve any fear, any limitation, any worry that we're not going to recognize ourselves if we choose to go ahead and embrace and expand in our awareness of the divine. I know that we are here to say yes. And it is with a grateful, open, loving heart that I say yes this morning, that I claim that divine love, I claim that divine goodness, and I allow it to be so, and so it is. Thank you.